Hey guys, well, while we are waiting for people to show up, gonna work on these really horrible jokes because that's what us dads do. Hey, Lanka, did you hear about the two compliance officers who got married?
No, what happened?
She regulates his toenails and he requires showers to be 2 minutes or less.
That was awful.
It was really bad. It was like one of the worst. Okay, well, here's an equally absolutely horrible joke. So an evil genie captured a compliance officer and her two friends, banished them to a desert for a week. The genie allowed each person to bring one thing. The first friend brought a canteen, so he wouldn't die of thirst. The second friend brought an umbrella to keep the sun off. The compliance officer brought a car door because if it got too hot, they could just wind down the window. No, that was even worse than the first. A little bit longer.
Well, at least with that one's kind of implying the ridiculous things that sometimes have to be done for compliance that maybe don't really accomplish anything. There's plenty of that.
I think that's your entire business model is ridiculous things that are necessary, but it just doesn't even make sense sometimes. So by the way, you may want to lose the glasses. We totally see your screen too. Not that we don't absolutely love to see exactly what you're working on. Kind of similar to, attorneys. You play the same function, but kind of in a different area. So at least on our side, there's always that little level of confidentiality and not sharing, what investors you're working with. And, one of the most dumbfounding things that I've ever heard of, and then I'll introduce you and then we definitely want to hear a lot more about you. So there's an attorney out there and he's doing like syndication and investment deals, and I'm not going to put him on blast. I'm not going to name names. So something that's really important is, like I was saying, confidentiality, attorney-client privilege, and not sharing information about, hey, what any clients are doing. I just found out that this attorney takes every investor email that they receive from their clients, from the guys that are raising capital, dumping it onto their own marketing list and start sending their own investment projects and other people's investment projects. Like, compliance wise, that's insane. From a FINRA compliance side, it's even worse because now all of a sudden it's being shared and utilized. And this really is something that's going on right now. And I'm like, oh my God. So for anybody that's watching, always make sure you are working with, we'll just say, scrupled, honest, and straightforward attorneys. It's something to ask about, and I never even in my entire life thought to say, y'all should ask about this, but really, coming up because it's compliance and literally dealing with it because of frankly unscrupulous attorney that's doing exactly that. That's not us. We'd never do that. But long story short, Alanka Nobles, it is so nice to have you on here. We've worked together for over a decade at this point, and a lot of people don't even know what a broker dealer is. To anybody that's watching, please, please, please load up any questions you have in chat. Kennedy, please share the information of how anybody can get a hold of Alanka or get a hold of us. And after kind of going through very high level and background and kind of the general stuff, we're going to have Alanka on here, me helping out as weekly as I can. answering any of your questions. So please add it in and we'll take the last, 20 minutes plus. Going any questions that may come up. But to start with, Alonka Nobles, it's very nice to meet you. Please tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And I've been watching you have your webinars. They're very educational. You are a rare attorney that provides information for free rather than keeping it all under lock and key until the dollars come pouring in. So kudos to you for that. I think people need to feel comfortable to come ask you questions so that they're not already 10 miles down the road in so much trouble that nobody can help them anymore. And that's actually a balancing trick that I have to play with people. They need to feel comfortable to talk to me before it gets to a situation. Being in compliance, our goal is to help people really not need the attorney to get them out of trouble. They need the attorney to help set up the structure, the documents and all of that. But we want to keep, both of us want to keep people from getting to a point where we're digging them out of a hole. I've been in the business since 1996, started at a captive oil and gas broker dealer in the Dallas area. Went out on my own to consult to the industry in 2002. One second, I have a furry creature in the way. Here we go.
Well, you could have just introduced your
I could, yeah, but then I would be completely distracted. I went to consult to the securities industry in 2002. And during that time, I took securities issuers through the FINRA membership process. I'll tell you that when an issuer securities who were raising money unregistered started to realize they got to a point where they maybe wanted to or needed to get registered, I would spend the majority of my time asking them, are you sure that this is what you want to do? Because once you go registered, you're married into FINRA's world, this shotgun wedding, and it's not fun. And there are ways that securities issuers can raise money under an issuer's exemption. The tricky part about it is
whoa. You're covering way too much.
Okay.
Just to keep things really nice and simple for people. And some people may actually not even know some of these definitions and words that you're bringing up. So I'm going to ask you, what's a broker dealer?
A broker dealer is a registered entity that is licensed with the FINRA, Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, who told the SEC that they will be the watchdog of these firms where you have licensed registered agents, have to pass tests and or supervise highly scrutinized outside business activities, outside securities accounts, all of that. But basically, it's like it's a registered investment banking firm that we have to answer to. We're regularly examined, or they are, and we are also. And it's a registered.
Why would anybody ever want to deal with a broker dealer? What's kind of the benefits for the issuers to have a selling agreement with a broker dealer?
Several reasons. One of them is that it provides some additional assurances for clients that somebody who has to answer to somebody else, a higher authority, is reviewing their documents, guiding the issuers on what is acceptable and not acceptable to present to investors. It's kind of like having a watchdog for them, and issuers who go through broker dealers also have the potential to network into selling group arrangements where other broker dealers get together and agree to work on selling the product for the sponsor.
And I think you really nailed on something that people don't understand, but to give my own little 2 cents, and have this conversation with people daily. You know, you're either licensed to sell investments or you're exempt from being licensed to sell investments. There is this issuer exemption. You know, I'd love to share this with anybody that has an interest. Please email me if you want to know more about the issuer exemption and what that requires. There's also other YouTube videos that we have on crowdfunding lawyers. But that's one option. The second option is to be licensed with a broker dealer. And the big thing, and this is why everybody, I would say, wants to work with Elanca and the Elanca types, you can pay people to raise money. You can actually pay that commission. I want 5%, 10%, all 15%, kind of that high range, to actually get help raising the capital. That's the number one reason why we reach out. Number two reason, people always ask, well, can a whole bunch of broker dealers work together to raise a lot of capital? And I think that's what you were getting at, Elanca.
Yeah, the syndication. And you're right. The main number one reason that you might want to go through the headache of working with a broker dealer is that you have motivated commissioned salespeople, and commissioned salespeople are much more effective at raising money than salaried salespeople, which is almost like an oxymoron to say salaried sales.
Well, you're dealing with FINRA, so oxymoron may be being nice.
Par for the course. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, and we've dealt with some interesting situations over many years. And FINRA, they don't feel like you're friends at all. Is that is it different on your side of the table versus the issuers? Like, what's the feeling that you get in dealing with FINRA, dealing with the SEC or the states when they kind of start doing these audits?
You know, it's I guess like any other thing, like getting pulled over by a cop. Is he the guy that's going to say, hey, you notice your tail lights out, go get that fixed and we're going to be okay? Or is he going to be the one that says, get out of the car now, let me see everything? I mean, the regulators can be anywhere between that. For the most part, if they understand what they're doing when they're looking at what you're doing in the securities business, you can work with them if they but there are a lot of bad actors out there, and they don't know whose car they're pulling over. And so it can be a balancing act working with the regulators, whether it's FINRA or the SEC or the state. The key though is to be prepared, have your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and be working with people who can tell you and give you the benefit of their experience of what they've seen in prior circumstances.
Love it. Could you explain a little bit between, like, right now we're just talking about broker dealers. The super majority of our clients try to avoid you like the plague, which even you understand why it's a big decision. Could you talk a little bit about like compliance, working with a broker dealer versus compliance and things to pay attention to if the issuers, if the sponsors of the investment are staying unregulated or staying non-broker dealer represented, I guess is a much better way to put it.
Yes, and to your point, the hat that I wear as a broker dealer is a hat of an additional tool to the securities issuers in that industry. But by far, the majority of my clients have all been on the unregistered, non-broker dealer avenue side, where I've consulted to them, which is back to that point about why I spend more time talking about, are we sure we have to go this way if we can keep you going down a path relying on the issuer's exemption. What was your question?
I don't know. Do you like to
Okay.
spin?
Okay, so in consulting to both types, from my hat as a broker dealer or my hat as a compliance consultant, the difference to a securities issuer who's hearing, okay, maybe what they need to be paying attention to, if they go through a broker dealer, they're going to have to provide a lot more information because that broker dealer is on the hook for conducting the raise and will have to provide more information to a regulator. If you're using our services as a compliance consultant, I'm going to be working more on the side of here's how you can be prepared if the state walks in, or if the SEC asks questions, or even if investors start asking more questions. There's, disclosures you want to know that have been made in the materials made by the securities attorney, certain ways that you present your marketing. Just because you're not going through a FINRA registered angle, there are still basic marketing, I guess, know-how. While you may be able to say something that is true, you may not realize the way that it comes out sounds not fair and balanced, because all the marketing information should still be fair and balanced. So if you're going to say something is, has this potential for returns and longevity or growth, you must balance that with the opposite end of that, and not just saying you could lose all your money. That's kind of one of those givens, but to actually say there's a chance that, then like the stuff that's in your risk disclosures in your PPMs, that we might not have a market for this, or there may be this thing that happens, more realistic downside potential rather than blanket.
I love it. When you say fair and balanced, and you know what, I deal with this like nonstop. What does fair and balanced mean? And I don't mean it in the Fox News sense. From marketing investments, what would you say that really means?
I think the key is to remember why these securities laws were all put into place, especially with unregistered sales type money raising, is the hypiness of too good to be true and all of that. The regulators were always and are always concerned that investors will stop listening after they hear the good news, and they'll just go, yeah, to the potential risks. So when I say fair and balanced, it really means let's not try to blow this out of the water, even if all signs show that this is going to be a home run, whatever it is. It's better to under promise and over deliver. It's better to be a little bit more sober in your marketing materials. And, sometimes securities sponsors or even registered reps can get annoyed, feeling like, but if I can't tell an investor everything that's possible in the writing, then how are they going to be interested? Well, for one, if you hold a little bit back, you have a reason to call them and to talk them through, and maybe they'll be more attentive, waiting to hear that key thing that they're looking for. So there's a way to do it without being too over the top and promising. Plus, that gets you on the radar, and nobody likes that because it's really hard to do business when you get the regulators breathing down your neck.
Well, and you bring up, and I love that, being on the radar. What types of things do you say will put you not only on the radar, but on the bullseye for any FINRA, SEC, or state regulator?
We all know we can't use the word guarantee in any form or fashion.
That's the safest investment right there.
Yes. those superlatives, those emphatic words. You don't want to do that, because it does cause people to start looking. I mean, I have a lot of prior relationships that I guess cowboyed themselves out too much and got the negative attention. And once they started getting looked at, because nobody's perfectly clean, you know, raising money and doing business can be messy sometimes. And you want to be as realistic and, like I say, sober about your representations as possible.
So what you're saying is, don't go have happy hour, stick to 2 drinks before you start doing mass emails versus 4 drinks and then mass emails.
So the mass emails thing, there is a big difference between whether you're working through a FINRA firm or not, because if you're working through a FINRA firm, there are more restrictions. But even if you're not, if you're just a securities issuer and you're sending out your mass emails, there's other governmental concerns, like the telemarketing registration requirements, whether it's at the state or at the federal level, the no-call lists. Those don't have as much teeth, but it's kind of like when somebody gets in trouble for something and they throw the mail fraud in because you crossed interstate commerce. You just don't need the added headache of getting sideways in the telemarketing laws.
Lord knows we all want to stay away from the, what are they, the 3 initial agencies?
Yeah, the alphabet soups. Yep.
Completely.
FTC. Yeah.
And I think that this is something that people really miss with, you know, we do so many different Reg D offerings. We're great at that, and we know it backwards and forwards. Other attorneys also know it. But literally what people don't think about is, you know, the investment company acts, the investment advisor acts, the do not call lists. There's even commodity, you know, regulations if you're trying to trade currencies or bacon, pork bellies, which I think is just amazing that you can trade bacon. But I mean, that really is part of the, like, getting educated and expanding your knowledge base. You know, the attorneys, I would say, we play a necessary evil, just like Alonka. You know, we're going to charge you this much to protect you on the front end. It's going to cost you that much on the back end. I see it very similar for yourself. I mean, there's definitely some costs to staying compliant, but I would at least guess it is far cheaper than saying I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, that's better to ask for forgiveness than permission does not work in this business.
Do you have any good examples? Because a good story is always helps understand, you know, somebody in the past. Please don't give any, you know, identifying information that really should have called you much earlier, but didn't. And it really didn't turn out well, and why that may be the case.
I have different scenarios where I've been called in to clean up a mess after the fact, which was unfortunate because it turned into something. You know, I had an example of a group that was told that they didn't need to file securities filings, blue sky filings, for example, because they were selling joint ventures. Well, the SEC disagreed about that and decided those joint ventures were securities after all. And so then they had years of offerings that were all out of compliance because of that. And so now they're having to, besides the fact that now they've opened the door to scrutiny in the rest of their business, now they've got to go back and scramble and update those filings. Then all those states that get those notifications are saying, whoa, you're so late. And so now you have to pay us all these extra fees for all these late filings. It was just a fiasco. And it was all because they decided to err on the side of, yeah, this sounds right to us. And I'll say, instead of thinking about all the different examples, an example of the thinking that gets people into trouble is when discussing it among themselves, they decide that, yeah, this makes perfect logical business sense. This, we've rationalized it internally. We've talked with each other about it. And then you move on down the road, but you didn't bring somebody else in who has the benefit of experience of having worked with multiple other circumstances that can give you the stories of, yeah, maybe a 1% chance, but there's still a chance that this other thing could happen. Is that a chance you're willing to risk, considering that once they open that door, they're going to be looking at everything? So really, it's the thinking that gets people into trouble, deciding for themselves that it makes sense rather than actually consulting with somebody.
I love what you just said. All right, guys, don't think.
Don't think only for yourselves. Get some other opinions in there.
Call the experts. And Alonka, this is one of them. We talked a lot about your broker dealer side of business, touched a little bit on the private equity. Are you looking for reps on your broker dealer or offices? Kind of, how can we help keep everybody that's watching compliant and grow?
Yeah, on the broker dealer side, we have been growing and changing and revamping our business model. It was originally designed to provide securities issuers dedicated proprietary branch offices with their own dedicated team of reps to sell their products. And over the last couple of years, we've been changing our model to serve with the broker dealer, to serve the registered reps who want to be independent and have a variety of opportunities to sell to their investors on the alternative side. They're used to the alternative investment sliver of an investor's portfolio was closer to 10 to 15%. And over the last few years, it has been closer to 40 to 50% that investors want to balance their stock market holdings with alternatives, because alternatives have the ability to be a lot more stable than rising and falling on a tweet of the stock market. So
what do you mean Twitter is the economy?
Yes. So we are looking for independent reps who want to run their own business through an alts firm. So we're kind of could frame it as to be a stockbroker of alts. We are happy to look at the different opportunities. We don't have our own mindset about we're only going to sell this, and if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else.
Love it. When it comes to your non-broker dealer consulting and services, why would I call you, and when should I call you, and what can you do to make sure that I don't get in trouble?
Why you would call is to find out, what, get some feedback and maybe discover what some options may be to you. On the non-broker dealer service that we provide, it's actually more of my favorite, because I'm freer to speak to you on what's really best for just you, not on the broker dealer side. Well, we got to figure out what works best for both of us because I'm on the hook with you. So on the non-registered consulting side, you can get the benefit of learning avenues that you may not be getting exposed to because you may not know what questions to ask. So we can talk about where have you been? And where would you like to see yourself going? And what things do you not know are available to you? Which I know they get those same kind of conversations with you. But between the two of us, we have our different little skill sets. And yours is definitely on the heavy lifting on the legal. And mine would be more viewed as a, well, it's a compliance consultant role.
So kind of the way that I like to explain it, and I'll be honest, sometimes as an attorney, it's not burying your head in the sand, but if we know about it, then we have to give certain advice sometimes. And you're on the broker dealer side, it's very similar. If you know about a problem, you have certain obligations to that problem, but on the private consulting, there may be different advice that you'd love to give, but you can't. And I'll tell you, on the legal representation side, it's the exact same way. So having somebody that knows everything, doesn't have certain legal obligations, regulatory obligations, say, here's what it really is, here's how it works in the real world, not just what this regulation says and how it really affects. And honestly, that's why I love pushing people in your direction, so they can learn more about what they can and can't do from what the rule book says, so just straight and narrow. I mean, and I don't mean this strangely, but literally, and I know the SEC and FINRA, the laws, the rules may say one thing, their interpretation sometimes makes zero sense. And that's where you got to look at what's really happening, not just what those, what is it, Dr. Google, Google JD, your wonderful Google attorney, your wonderful Google compliance officer, simply doesn't necessarily tell you the truth, not as it applies to the real world. But at least that's my horrible 2 cents.
Well, actually, I have found this myself because, we are researchers, you and I, and so are others in the business. And a lot of times when you're searching for answers on the internet, you're being given just enough information to actually have to call and hire the person who's writing the article, because they're not really giving you the answer. They're just telling you on a really high level, yeah, you might be getting in trouble for this or you might not. And they don't really answer the question plainly. And that's when you want to have somebody who's in your corner that's really only working for you, not necessarily conflicted about what that ramification has to themselves.
I love it. Well, now it's been about a half an hour. We do have a ton of questions to keep life nice and easy. What I'd like to do is go ahead and I'll just read questions and you give your 2 cents. I'll give my 2 cents. And if we get to the end, fantastic. But let's get as far as we can. And definitely, there's some great questions in here.
Sounds great.
So, and, for anybody, if you have additional questions, thoughts, etc., keep adding them and we'll just keep going through them. And if we don't get through everything, no sweat, we'll actually throw a little bit more on an email chain and shoot it out to you as well. I brought this up to Alonka, and I'm not going to put her on the spot right here and now, but we have talked about doing some sort of a smaller private securities review, not like a full-blown compliance audit, but like answer a few questions, high level, this is what you're doing, things to think about. And I totally sprung this on Alonka, so I'm not going to put you on the spot with it today. But once I get her pinned down, we will totally send it to everybody that is here today, and really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, Alonka. Any final thoughts before we go to questions?
Well, let's see what we uncover.
All right, Ari is wondering if there's a minimum or maximum amount that you can raise. When does it start to make sense to work with a broker dealer? And I'll answer it for the non-broker dealer.
To work with a broker dealer, you really need to be wanting to raise 50 million or more, you know, to try to do a $10 million raise through a broker dealer may not make as much sense, especially if it's one-off. You're going to want to have this as your regular future business model. And I don't know where that question is, but I guess really you want to be looking at 50 million. And you also, pardon, you also want to be looking at the number of investors that you're seeking to take this from. I mean, if you're taking, you know, $1 million positions, that maybe not so much, but if you're wanting to aggregate $100,000 positions, then you definitely.
And I would like, for my own 2 cents on this, I have clients that are still raising $100 million a year, not through broker dealers and completely private, but they've got their audience figured out. They don't have to pay anybody to help raise capital. All, you know, meeting the requirements of the issuer exemption. So there's really not a maximum. However, at a minimum, as soon as I start saying, hey, I want to pay Bubba 10% of the capital that he brings in, it doesn't matter if that's a tiny investment, that's still a broker dealer activity. So it's something to think about, possibly very early in it. But I think really to Alonka's point is, it is a pain. There's a lot behind it. And you don't do it for one deal. You jump into the proverbial frying pan because your game plan is to, this is your business going forward, doing deals, raising capital. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And I did see, well, I'll let you get to the question.
All right, we got a bunch of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you find a broker dealer if I've decided now I want a broker dealer, I want to pay somebody?
That's actually a harder situation. I mean, it's one of those things you almost have to know somebody to get to know somebody. And there are a lot of firms out there that don't want to work with anybody unless they've already been involved in this space. It is a hard space to break into. Broker dealers take on a lot of risk, and a lot of them are based on the experience of what I've, the firms that I've known, and I've known a lot, they have a space that they want to work within and a criteria, and they don't want to budge from that because it's just not worth the risk to them. Because the way that I started my firm was to really it was designed to create, to fill that gap between completely non-registered money raising to not big enough to go to the broker dealer world. That's why people got that proprietary branch opportunity through our firm.
Love it. And I know I've talked to managing broker dealers that have basically said, if it's not at least a $30 million fund, we're not even touching it. Mm-hmm. So kind of going to your categorical, you know, saying, you know, I've been raising capital for apartment deals and I've got 5 properties. I've done $20 million in equity over the past couple years, and I want to go big. Then kind of what are my next steps of finding a broker dealer, or is there a list to start calling off of, or just, of course, the easy answer is call me, I'll point you in the right direction. But what's a better answer?
I mean, you could Google it. Everybody starts there. You know, you wouldn't typically see broker dealers advertising themselves as looking for sponsors to raise money for. Yeah. So it's kind of like a special club. You got to know somebody who speaks for you and potentially can get set up with that relationship. And then you could interview local broker dealers, big broker dealers. But you're going to have to really dress for the occasion. You're going to have to show a track record, you know, prior operating history results, what your business plan is, get third-party audited financials, third-party audited due diligence reviews. That's why it becomes a big undertaking. It's because I get calls sometimes, somebody saying, hey, yeah, we want to raise some money. Would you help us? I'm like, yeah, I'm not waiting for an opportunity to do that. This becomes a relationship that we start working together in.
Love it. So next question, who pays the broker dealer? Is it the investors, the issuers, the offices? Like, what kind of costs should an issuer be expecting on the front end versus what gets paid while you're raising capital?
Typically, an issuer should expect to have a reserve of 25 to 100,000, depending on how things are going to, what the business plan is going to be. And the say the $25,000 bucket of preparatory money may be because, well, could be more than that, because it depends. Are you using a securities issuer, securities attorney to create your PPM? Because if not, you better budget for that too. But you do some due diligence reviews, maybe a third-party report. So budget in the front end for the preliminary work, but that money can be reimbursed through the raise, and then the commission is paid through the raise. So if an issuer wants X dollars, budget another 15 to 30% for commissions and expect on certain fees.
Perfect. Define marketing materials. Interesting question, but I see what they're getting at.
Okay.
Why are you paying attention to what is getting put out to the world, a general solicitation? And would a text still count? Would social media post? Well, what if it's a private message or an email? What is marketing?
So that is a big Pandora's box of questions and answers that I can tell you. It all depends. So a text message.
I didn't know you were an attorney.
A text message saying, hey, we have something new for you to look at. That's not really a marketing thing, but a registered rep doing that with an investor, that's like a no-no unless it's, there's rules if it's going through a firm. If it's not going through a firm, marketing material, another tricky question. Are you marketing the company itself? Like, we are X company, we do X things, or are you marketing this investment opportunity? And what does that look like? Then you start running into, does this violate the general solicitation prohibition? Are you allowed to do that? Do you have accredited verification? It's a Pandora's box.
I think you brought up a really hot button though, differentiating between marketing and advertising for an investment and marketing your brand. Do you see a real bright line difference between those two? Or, when I talk to people, I may recommend 3 different entities, one being like your brand, your public face. Number 2 would be the manager of whatever the syndication is to kind of deal with some of those management risks. And then the syndication itself to raise capital into. At least when I'm talking and coaching with people, I'm telling them, well, don't advertise the issuer. Nobody will ever know that management entity, but you're public facing, it's not connected to the deal. Advertise, market all the wonderful things you're doing all day long. Thoughts on, am I pitching it right, wrong, or?
That's what I have told people is, you have a right to exist and you have a right to be known. It's when you are inviting people to give you money, then that's where it starts to, get into that area that you have to ask, am I inviting people to give me money, but I'm not telling them what it's for? you know, that then we have to start working. But yes, you have a right to be, you know, a great apartment acquisition company or oil and gas operator, driller. And what gets tricky is and really the problems are if something goes sideways and then there's this look back of everything you did. It's not usually on the front end that somebody stops you. It's after the crash. Then they look at, oh, well, look at all this other stuff that you did wrong. And so we're going to pile on. But there's definitely a right to exist in my mind as a company. But once you start putting it out there that you are seeking investors, now you're opening up a different channel that you want to be very careful with. And back in the olden days, before the internet so much, the regulators,
don't date yourself like that.
the state regulators would put themselves on lead lists and let themselves be called by people looking to raise money. And the people who were calling them would say things like, you know, we're looking for investors. Do you invest or do you look at investment opportunities from time to time? And the regulators would very truthfully say, I look at these all the time. And then they would get them to send the materials. And then the next thing you know, there's a cease and desist coming to the office. And also the securities divisions of the various states will, you know, one of their job duties is to scour the internet looking for, are there any violators out there? Is anybody, you know, making a general solicitation or inviting investors? And then they'll go through the process like they're a pretend investor. And that's where you get sideways.
I like it. Okay, next question. And I just threw up my my own QR code. So if y'all do have any questions, want to reach out, kind of like we're so used to with menus, take a picture, get you all of my info. We are going to eventually, usually it takes a couple weeks, get this up on YouTube, and we'll also share all of Alanka's information there. Alanka, please make sure your contact info is in the chat.
I saw it come through there, yeah.
Love it. We got some more questions, lots of more questions. What if you're doing a retirement planning event and discussing fixed annuities, stating your principal is protected and lifetime guaranteed? You know what? I'm going to go ahead and answer this. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. I can tell you that lifetime guaranteed income and protected are still those definitive will guaranteed safe words to stay away from. There is always the risk that insurance companies go belly up, that they fail, and then all of those guarantees and all that protected goes right out the window. It doesn't happen often, but you know, the only organization that can guarantee anything at this point, normally I would say the federal U.S. government, but even that is questionable nowadays. So, is there a waiting period between being registered and being exempt? I think this is going to the issuer exemption, and from Destry Witt, who, you know, hey Destry, it's great to hear from you. I'm glad that you're on here. When he's referencing registered, you know, maybe you could speak to just registered with a broker dealer and also just registered with an RIA.
Okay, for purposes of somebody who's been affiliated with a FINRA firm or registered as a FINRA agent, the SEC says you must wait a year before you can rely on the issuer's exemption from registration. So, and they're all the time, there's registered reps that want to spin off, and I can do this myself. I'm going to rely on the issuer's exemption from registration. And the SEC holds you to a higher standard that you just can't do it. I mean, you might be able to get away with it, but you're not allowed to do it.
All right. What if I'm just a part of a state level RIA?
I'm not aware of any restriction at that level. and maybe you are.
I'm aware that you know everything about everything. So if you're not aware, that means it doesn't exist. Good way to say, hey, just pay attention to Alanka. She knows. Alanka knows.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that it's only registered with FINRA.
You are correct, madam. Talking about digital marketing and workflow interaction with the compliance group, why do broker-dealers see Reg A Plus and Regulation CF offerings being not suitable to represent in their product mix? Why would a broker-dealer say no to Reg A or CF offerings for their investors?
Typically, and it goes back to that narrow space that they feel comfortable working with, the Reg A Plus and particularly the Reg CF are too new for them to feel it's worth their time or attention. It throws a monkey wrench in all of their stable business practices and compliance structures. It really does not, it does not make sense to a lot of firms to do that. I, on the other hand, am super excited about those opportunities. I like the idea of democratizing the business, keeping it fresh and young and new, and responding to what investors really like. And both of those things, particularly Reg CF, were created, those opportunities were created by Congress to be modeled after the successes that Congress saw in the GoFundMe and the Kickstarter. And in those two scenarios, people are throwing money at opportunities, or maybe people who just need money in the GoFundMe case, it's your Ukrainian family, but they get nothing in return. The Kickstarter, you get a t-shirt or you get the first coolest cooler that comes off the line, but it prevented people who cared about who they were participating with from benefiting as an equity owner or a debt issuer. And so I think it was a great idea that those opportunities, but the traditional, certainly not the wirehouses, but traditional broker dealers do not like that newfangled stuff.
I get it entirely. So we have more questions than time. So I do want to continue through this. Would you be open to us scheduling another time that we can actually go through the rest of these questions and then we'd share it to everybody that is on here? Just because we don't want anybody to feel like they've got to jump off and their question never even got to.
I'm happy to, yes.
All right, well then let's continue on for the time being. And I did want to say, well, thank you for bringing up my Ukrainian family now. My lovely wife, Jasmine, has not completely killed me for brought in a family of 5 that are currently staying at our house from the Ukraine, just trying to get them reacquainted and settled. We ran a very successful GoFundMe. They're very well set up now. I mean, it's last I looked, it was passing 13,000. We're getting them an apartment. They're ready to start life. We are going to roll out another one that's more to help thousands of Ukrainians, where we're going to try to raise over $100,000. And one of our attorneys, Nancy Tegeter, been involved with CFL for years. Right now, she's full-time focused on helping the Ukrainians, and we want to support her and whatever we can do to make the world a better place. All right, well, this is a pretty simple, straightforward one. Can we raise money and earn equity as a general manager of an LLC or similar and not put our own money at risk? Can we have a carried interest that we didn't pay for?
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. Moving on. What are your thoughts on the new testing the waters rules? Minefield to catch sponsors, or just the benefit to be able to start pre-marketing?
It is allowed. Anytime we're in the securities industry, there's going to be a minefield risk. And if you do it soberly and correctly, then you won't have any issues. I mean, as that boils down, it's not a trick. I think the testing waters is absolutely important for issuers to be able to conduct that. Yeah.
I love it. You know, a big part of the testing the waters is that you haven't settled on the securities offering or regulation. So once you say, okay, we're going to definitely do this 506B offering that doesn't allow public solicitation, you can't keep advertising it. But as long as you're still working on the deal and considering, well, do I do this as a 506C, 506B, Reg A, CF, etc., while that's still coming together and getting figured out, that's where the testing the waters applies. There are specific disclaimers that we recommend including. For y'all that are here today, I'm happy to share it with you. For everybody else, give us a call for an, we'll talk to you later. What is the status of the new finders regulations with the SEC? Is that moving forward?
I think it is stalled. Maybe you know something else about that, right?
I know they're wonderful ideas,
Mm,
that nothing's happening very
correct.
quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that's moved anywhere. Do you know, or can you explain kind of, we've talked about finders in the past where you're not getting paid a commission or a success fee. Do you know enough to be able to talk a little bit about the new proposals for finders coming down the pipeway?
No.
Okay. Well, it's like the exact same thing, but requiring some level of like limited registration with and through a broker dealer, a little less oversight, but more, giving FINRA more to dig into to make sure that everybody's doing right.
And, Texas has its own Texas Finders registration. We're in Texas. I don't know where your other folks are from, but, and I can't speak to other states, but it comes up a lot for the Texas Finders registration. And it can be tricky because people think that they can use it to avoid becoming actual FINRA registered. The person who wants to get Texas registered as a finder has to basically fill out a Form BD, just like you're going to be a broker dealer, and a Form U4, just like as if you're a registered rep. And now you're on the hook and you're supposed to be getting nominal compensation, not the same kind of compensation you would get. So it's one of those opportunities that really don't work out as well as you think that they're going to avoid full-on registration.
And I know more and more states are requiring the registration. I've gone through it in the past, at least in Texas. I will say that we've filed it, nice and easy process. That first year, every time we've done it, the state shows up at whatever the designated office is. They want to dig in. They want to learn more. They want to have their fingers and toes in everything that is going on. So it works, just kind of like dealing with RAs, broker dealers, you're subject to investigation.
Mm-hmm.
So it has been time. I want to thank everybody for joining and being here. Alonka, in the next couple of days, hopefully we can find as many questions as there are, another hour potentially, where we can we'll focus on the questions, we'll go through it all. And then for everybody that has been on here, has been on the list, we will go ahead and share it with you. But, Alonka, thank you so much for joining. Any final words or thoughts?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love what you guys are doing. I'm so proud that you invited me to participate. I hope that some of the information that I've been able to give and that we've been able to give will be beneficial and help people feel a little bit less in the dark about the myriad of securities, rules and pitfalls. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I know we're going to post it elsewhere. If we want to get a hold of you, is the contact information in the chat, or you want to give your cell phone number so I can bug you, text you,
Sure.
ring you nonstop? Yes. All right. Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
I encourage anybody who wants to get a hold of me to leave a voicemail. Don't just expect a call back, because you know how it is these days. So definitely leave a voicemail if I don't answer.
Well, sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Alonka, I'll swing around with you later on.
Thank you.
Talk to you
Have a
later.
great day.